Syrian T-55 modifications. Desperation creates innovation. Damascus, 2013. A Syrian Army T-55 rolls into combat with something bizarre welded to its turret. Mesh baskets filled with bricks and rubble. Not advanced composite armor, not reactive tiles, literal construction bricks stuffed into wire cages. The crew knows this won't stop a modern anti-tank missile, but it's better than nothing, and nothing is what they have left. Welcome to Syrian T-55 modifications, where 60-year-old Soviet tanks get upgraded with whatever materials survive the war. North Korean laser rangefinders scavenged from the 1980s, Ukrainian modernization packages from the 1990s, ERA tiles stripped from destroyed vehicles and replaced with rubble, ATGMs fired through the main gun barrel. This is armor warfare at the edge of collapse, where desperation breeds the strangest innovations in military history. And somehow, these Frankenstein tanks are still fighting in 2025. To understand Syrian T-55 modifications, you need to understand what Syria started with. Syria's T-55 fleet can be divided into four main variants: standard T-55A, North Korean upgraded T-55, T-55AM, and T-55MV. Let's break down each one. The T-55A is the baseline, the original Soviet export model from the 1960s and 70s, a 100mm rifled gun, 200mm of frontal armor at best angles, a 580 horsepower diesel engine, adequate in 1965, dangerously obsolete by 2011 when the Civil War begins. These are the most common variant, issued to militia forces and second-line units. Then there's the North Korean variant, notable for North Korean-created laser rangefinders, some with smoke grenade launchers and 14.5mm heavy machine guns. This modernization happened in the 1970s and 80s, Syria's cheaper alternative to Soviet upgrades after lessons from the 1973 Yom Kippur War. The North Koreans sold Syria laser rangefinders when the Soviets wouldn't. Quality was questionable, but they worked, sort of. The T-55AM represents Soviet-era modernization, better fire control, improved ammunition, reinforced armor. These mainly serve with the Syrian Arab Army proper, not militia forces. They're relatively sophisticated by Syrian standards, which tells you how low Syrian standards are. And finally, the T-55MV, the crown jewel. 200 T-55s were upgraded to MV standard in Ukraine in 1997. The T-55MV features thorough modernization, including a new engine, Contact 1 explosive reactive armor, increasing protection against rocket grenades. Even more impressively, Syrian T-55 MVs are armed with 9 M117M Bastion anti-tank missiles fired through the tank's 100mm barrel. That's a game changer. Suddenly, a 1960s tank can engage modern armor at extended range with guided munitions. The T-55MV could compete with or even surpass Syrian T-72 tanks in combat effectiveness. Think about that. A properly modernized T-55 from the 1990s upgrades rivals a T-72 from the 1970s and 80s. That's how effective good upgrades can be. But here's the problem. When civil war erupts in 2011, Syria has maybe 200 T-55 MVs, a few hundred T-55 AMs, maybe 1,000 North Korean variants, and several thousand baseline T-55 As. And they're about to lose half of them. 2011-2014. The Syrian Arab Army disintegrates. Not metaphorically, literally. Most SAA personnel and weapons have been transferred to the National Armed Forces and various militias. The army as a cohesive force ceases to exist. Units defect. Entire bases get overrun. Equipment is abandoned, captured, or destroyed. In August 2014, Islamic State overruns Brigade 93 near Anisa, capturing at least 32 T-55s, the largest heavy arms haul of the Civil War at that time. ISIS now has tanks. Rebel groups capture T-55s. Kurdish forces capture T-55s. Everyone is fighting everyone, and Syrian T-55s are on all sides. The government forces, what's left of them, face a nightmare scenario. They're fighting insurgents armed with TOW missiles supplied by the United States, cornets supplied by Iran, RPG-29s from Libya. Modern anti-tank weapons are everywhere, and the government's tank fleet is bleeding out.
An estimated 300 T-72s of all types remain in service as of 2014. That's down from 700 delivered. T-55 losses are even worse. Thousands are gone, destroyed, or captured. The survivors are wearing out. Engines are failing. Tracks are breaking. Spare parts don't exist because the supply chain has collapsed. And this is when the weird modifications start appearing. Because when you can't build new tanks, when you can't even properly maintain old tanks, you improvise, you scavenge, you weld on whatever provides protection. You turn tanks into mobile junkyards that somehow still fight. Let's talk about the most visible Syrian modification: improvised armor. Battle-worn T-72 AVs fitted with exceptionally crude armor upgrades appear commonly in photos, but T-55s get even more creative treatments. The first type is mesh baskets on the turret, presumably made from thin metal pipes or commercial materials like wall insulation mesh, filled with building bricks and rubble to replace lost Contact 1 ERA. Let's be clear, this is insane. Bricks don't stop shaped charges, but they provide standoff distance. The warhead detonates against the brick, the jet forms, and maybe it loses enough energy before hitting the actual armor. Does it work? Sometimes. Probably. Nobody's conducting controlled testing. Crews believe it works, and belief matters when you're climbing into a 60-year-old tank to fight Tau missiles. The psychological value alone might be worth the weight penalty. Some examples show mesh side skirts made from similar material, welded on cages running the length of the hull, stuffed with rubble, sandbags, concrete blocks, whatever's available. It looks absurd. It probably is absurd, but when your alternative is no additional protection, absurd becomes reasonable. Other modifications are more purposeful. Syrian tankers weld additional steel plates to vulnerable areas: turret front, hull glasses, turret ring. The plates aren't uniform thickness. They're scavenged from destroyed vehicles, from construction materials, from whatever steel can be found. The welds are crude, but crude armor beats no armor. Sandbags appear frequently, piled on engine decks, draped over turrets, stacked around vulnerable areas. Sand provides some protection against heat warheads. It disrupts the jet. More importantly, it's free and everywhere. Damascus is full of rubble. Rubble becomes armor. Some crews go further. Entire tanks get encased in concrete. Yes, concrete. They drive the tank into a prepared position, build concrete forms around it, and turn it into a pillbox. The tank can't move anymore, but it doesn't need to move. It's defending a fixed position. The concrete provides significant protection against artillery and airstrikes. The tank becomes a fortification.
But not all Syrian modifications are crude. Some show remarkable technical sophistication when parts are available. Remember those T-55 MVs with Contact 1 ERA? When those bricks get destroyed in combat, they can't be replaced. Ukraine isn't shipping ERA to Syria in 2015, so Syrian engineers improvise. Dozens of 9 M11-17M Bastion missiles were captured from the Tel Ahmar garrison in Quneitra province. These missiles, designed to be fired through the T-55 MV's gun barrel, represent cutting-edge 1990s Soviet technology. They can penetrate 550 millimeters of armor at 4,000 meters. That's enough to threaten any tank on the Syrian battlefield. But missiles without working fire control are useless. Syrian technicians somehow keep these systems operational. They scavenge components from destroyed vehicles. They jury-rig repairs. Thermal sights fail, so they substitute with whatever optics they can cannibalize. The result is Frankenstein fire control systems that technically work, maybe. North Korean laser rangefinders get transplanted between vehicles. A destroyed T-55 with a working rangefinder becomes a donor for 3 other tanks with failed systems. The rangefinders are crude by Western standards. They probably have a failure rate of 30 to 40%, but 60% accuracy beats eyeballing range entirely. Some T-55s receive upgraded engines, not new engines, those don't exist, but Syrian mechanics rebuild engines using parts from multiple donors. A T-55A gets a power plant cobbled together from 2 failed engines, and suddenly it can move again. The engine will fail in 6 months instead of lasting years, but 6 months is an eternity in 2015 Damascus.
Communication systems get upgraded through equally desperate means. Soviet-era radios are replaced with commercial handheld radios, sometimes literally taped inside the tank. It's not secure, it's not reliable, but it's better than the failed 1970s radio equipment that hasn't worked in years. Then there are the official upgrades, the ones that show Syrian military engineers still trying to create coherent modernization programs despite the war. The T-72AV Shafra was a test bed for armor that could have been used on the T-72 Grenadier, a planned but never finalized upgrade program. Official testing began February 27, 2017 and ended March 22. During this period, Syrian engineers tested new armor configurations on T-72s. Some of these lessons filtered down to T-55 upgrades. Shafra armor, whatever its final configuration, represents an attempt at systematic modernization rather than ad hoc field modifications. The idea: develop modular armor packages that can be bolted on to existing tanks without extensive rework. Other vehicles, including at least one bulldozer and ZSU-23-4 Shilka, received Shafra armor upgrades seen from late March onward. The Mahmia upgrade, also called Adra, represents another systematic approach. Mahmia T-72s feature comprehensive armor packages, ERA tiles, cage armor, applique steel plates, all integrated into a coherent design. Some T-55s receive similar treatment, though less extensively. The goal? Create a super T-55 that can survive the modern battlefield. Does it work? Partially. A Mahmia-style upgraded T-55 has significantly better protection than baseline, but it's still a 60-year-old tank facing 21st-century weapons. The armor helps, it's not enough. The T-72 Grenadier program aimed to create armor resistant to all enemy missile types, an ambitious goal given Syria's limited resources. The program never materialized beyond concepts, but the ambition shows Syrian military engineers understood they needed revolutionary solutions, not incremental improvements.
So do Syrian T-55 modifications actually work? The answer is complicated. In urban combat, where engagement ranges are short and tanks operate as mobile pillboxes, modified T-55s perform adequately. The improvised armor provides some protection against RPGs. The ATGMs fired through the main gun allow engagement of enemy armor at extended range. The psychological effect of having any tank, even an obsolete one, matters in street fighting. But against modern anti-tank weapons, modifications only delay the inevitable. A Tau-2A missile will penetrate a T-55 MV with full ERA. The brick-filled cages might cause a premature detonation, reducing penetration slightly, but probably not enough. The RPG-29 with a tandem warhead defeats ERA and penetrates regardless of mesh screens. Syrian tankers know this. They're not stupid. They understand their tanks are obsolete death traps, but they climb in anyway, because the alternative, no armor support, is worse. Infantry supported by tanks, even bad tanks, fights better than infantry alone. The modifications extend service life, though. A T-55 that should have been scrapped in 2005 is still fighting in 2024 because Syrian mechanics keep repairing it with scavenged parts. The engine fails, they rebuild it. The transmission breaks, they cannibalize another wreck. The gun wear reaches the point where accuracy is terrible, but a terrible 100mm gun still beats no gun. T-55s participated on both sides in the Syrian civil war. Government forces, rebels, ISIS, Kurdish forces, everyone used them. This widespread use proved the basic platform's utility despite obsolescence. A tank everyone can operate and maintain has value precisely because of that universality. What do Syrian T-55 modifications teach us about armor warfare? First, logistics matter more than technology. Syria had sophisticated T-55 MVs with modern fire control, ATGMs, and ERA. They also had crude T-55As with brick armor. Both types kept fighting. Why? Because Syrian mechanics could maintain them with scavenged parts.
A super advanced tank that can't be repaired is useless. A crude tank that can be fixed with scrap metal stays in the fight. Second, incremental improvements compound. The difference between a baseline T-55A and a fully modified Syrian variant isn't revolutionary. Maybe 20–30% better protection, slightly better fire control, somewhat more lethal ammunition. But those incremental improvements keep accumulating. The modified variant survives encounters that kill the baseline. Over dozens of engagements, that matters. Third, crews adapt faster than equipment. Syrian tankers learn to use their obsolete vehicles effectively despite limitations. Hull-down positions to hide weak armor. Ambush tactics to get first-shot advantage. Combined operations with infantry to provide security against close-range threats. Tactics compensated for equipment deficiencies. Fourth, appearance deceives. Those brick-filled cages look absurd in photos. Western analysts mock them. But they're the product of crews desperately trying to survive, and crude armor that provides even 10% more protection is worth welding on when the alternative is death. Fifth, wars don't wait for perfect equipment. Syria couldn't produce modern tanks. They couldn't import them. So they fought with what they had, modified however possible. The result was Frankenstein armor that looked ridiculous but kept fighting. Today, Syrian T-55s are still in service. Not all variants, many have been destroyed or captured, but hundreds remain, scattered across government-held territory, operated by various militias, maintained with increasingly desperate field-expedient repairs. The T-54-55 series is the most produced tank in history, with estimated production from 96,500 to 100,000, still used by up to 50 armies worldwide. The Syrian modifications represent the final chapter of the T-55 story, a 60-year design pushed beyond all reasonable limits, kept alive through improvisation, scavenging, and sheer desperation. They're monuments to human ingenuity under impossible circumstances. They're also monuments to obsolescence, to equipment so outdated that no modification can make it truly competitive. But they're still fighting. In 2025, Syrian T-55s with brick armor and scavenged optics are rolling into combat. That alone deserves recognition. Not celebration, but recognition. These tanks were obsolete in 1990. They're fighting in 2025. That's not a triumph, it's a tragedy. But it's also a testament to how long military equipment can survive when there's no alternative.
If this deep dive into the strangest tank modifications in modern warfare grabbed you, that like helps others discover these technical breakdowns. Subscribe to Steel Specs for more analysis of military vehicles pushed beyond their design limits. What other improvised armor should we analyze? Iraqi T-72 modifications? Libyan pickup truck technicals? Yemeni tank conversions? Drop your suggestions below. Every comment shapes future content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next desperate innovation.